The piano. In the dark. In a house where it hadn't been touched in over 1,000 days, Adrian Valente froze mid-stride in the hallway. His blood turned to ice water. 3 years. 3 years since Serena, his brilliant pianist wife, had breathed her last. 3 years since he'd locked that room and thrown away the key, figuratively speaking. The key actually sat in his desk drawer, gathering dust like everything else in his life that he'd made it crystal clear to every soul in his household. That instrument was sacred, untouchable. Don't even dust it. But tonight, when he pushed open the forbidden door, the sight that greeted him made his heart stop. There she sat, a tiny girl on the piano bench, her short legs dangling, her chubby fingers stumbling over the keys, playing a melody that only Adrian and Serena had ever known. A private song. Their song. His mansion held its collective breath. All the staff knew what happened when the boss got angry. And he always got angry. But tonight was different. Adrian didn't explode. He didn't rage. He just stood there, frozen, which left everyone completely speechless. Let me tell you about this man. Adrian Valente had just turned 39 that spring. Nobody in the city of Chicago dared send him a birthday card. In the southern shipping yards, where massive cargo containers moved through the early morning fog like slow-moving metal beasts, his name meant 3 things: absolute control, complete silence, and brutal consequences. He commanded the shipping routes from the harbor to the state border. He ran 4 casinos along the Indiana line. His underground money backed half the construction in the West District. And nobody asked questions, because the paperwork conveniently didn't exist. Every morning at exactly 6, he dressed in the same uniform: black suit, black shirt, no tie. His grandfather's silver watch on his wrist. 1 cup of bitter black coffee in his study. 3 newspapers read in utter silence. Then off to work by 7. His lawyers would be waiting. His partners would be waiting longer. When he walked into a room, men rose to their feet. Women looked down. Every employee, from the gate guard to the senior accountant, addressed him with one word: sir. He never shared meals, never hosted guests, never appeared at weddings, funerals, or holiday parties. Chicago whispered plenty about the Valente crime boss, but nobody ever whispered that they'd seen him smile. His estate sat on a hill in Lincoln Park, 3 stories of cold marble, heavy oak, and dead silence. Chandeliers that hadn't glowed in years. Hallways lined with portraits of dead ancestors. The whole place felt like a mausoleum. Only one person moved through those halls without fear. Mrs. Rose was 60. She'd served 3 generations of Valentes. She'd scolded Adrian as a boy for tracking mud on her clean floors, and she still talked to him exactly the same way at 39. Sir, you didn't eat again. I'm not hungry, Rose. You're never hungry. And you keep getting thinner. One day I'll bury you before I retire. He never answered. But he never told her to stop. Either. The household staff operated under 3 ironclad rules. Never speak the dead mistress's name. Never enter the 2nd floor east wing. And never, absolutely never, touch anything that had belonged to her. The music room key stayed locked in Adrian's desk. He never carried it. Never looked at it. He just knew it was there. And that was enough. But tonight, at 11 o'clock, Adrian stood at his study window. The city sprawled below him in yellow and red lights. In his hand, a glass of whiskey he'd poured but never tasted. The same ritual for 3 years. Maya Bennett was 28 when she walked through those iron gates. She hadn't had a good night's sleep in 14 months. 14 months since a construction scaffold collapsed on the west side and killed her husband before breakfast. 14 months of medical bills that arrived faster than paychecks. 14 months of asking neighbors for sugar and pretending everything was fine. She'd been working as a waitress at a diner when Mrs. Rose found her. The old woman had known Maya's mother 30 years ago, back when they sang together in a church choir. Mrs. Rose walked in, ordered tea, and just watched. She watched how Maya cleaned up spills without complaint, how she knelt on the sticky floor to tie a little girl's shoelace without missing a beat, how she smiled and kissed the child's hand like nothing in the world was wrong. How old is your daughter? Mrs. Rose asked. 3, ma'am. How many hours do you work? Whatever they'll give me. The interview was brief. 2 housekeepers had quit the Valente estate that year. The silence, they said, was unbearable. The master was worse. Mrs. Rose was done training frightened women who fled within a season. I'll offer you the position. You and the child. Small rooms on the 3rd floor, but warm. You'll follow 3 rules. Maya listened carefully. Don't speak the mistress's name. Don't enter the east wing. Don't touch anything that belonged to her. And child, Mrs. Rose added softly, don't be hurt if he doesn't answer you. He's forgotten how. Maya didn't ask about pay. Didn't ask about time off. Just one question. Could Ellie stay with her at night, Mrs. Rose nodded. Of course. What kind of woman would I be otherwise? They came 2 days later. 2 old suitcases. A cardboard box tied with kitchen string. Ellie clutched a worn cloth rabbit, the last gift from her father. The fur was thin. The ears had been mended twice. It still smelled faintly of him, though only Ellie could detect it anymore. The gate opened silently. The gravel drive stretched forever. The massive doors swallowed them into a world of cold marble and staring portraits. Ellie tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, is there a ghost here? Maya smiled her brave smile. But she felt it too. That strange chill. That pressing silence. 3 days passed. Thursday evening. The laundry room hummed with the industrial dryer. Steam clung to Maya's hair. Ellie set down her rabbit and wandered off. She didn't run. Didn't call out. Just followed the smell of something warm, bread, maybe meat, down the stairs to the first floor. She pushed open a door twice her height. The dining room stretched before her like a fairy tale. A long walnut table. 12 empty chairs. Polished silver gleaming in the candlelight. And at the far end, one man in a black suit, cutting into a fish he wasn't eating. Ellie walked the entire length of the room, tiny feet whispering on marble. She stopped at his elbow and tugged his sleeve. Uncle, are you sad? Adrian lifted his head. 3 years. 3 years since anyone had dared ask that question. Not as lawyers. Not as partners. Not the priest who visited every Christmas and left immediately. Not even Mrs. Rose. The waiters at the sideboard went pale. One dropped a spoon. The other ran for Maya. Adrian just stared at the child. She stared back. No fear. None at all. Ellie took his silence as permission. She climbed onto the chair beside him, settled herself like a tiny judge, and reached into her pocket. Empty. She'd left the rabbit upstairs. She pushed her small hand across the tablecloth toward his. I'll bring him tomorrow. When you're sad, you hug rabbit. Then it's finished. Maya burst through the doorway. She saw her daughter beside Adrian Valente, and for a moment she couldn't move. Then she rushed forward, dropped to her knees, and began apologizing frantically, pulling Ellie off the chair. Adrian said nothing. He just raised one finger. A quiet gesture to the butler. He wasn't angry. Maya carried Ellie away. The child waved solemnly over her mother's shoulder. That night, Adrian sat alone with the rabbit Maya had brought down by mistake. It smelled of cookies and something else, something like sunlight. He'd forgotten that existed. The next morning, he left the rabbit in the hallway with a box of candy beside it. No note. Upstairs, Ellie hugged rabbit back to sleep. She had no idea she'd just done something nobody in Chicago had dared in 3 years. Weeks passed, and something in the Valente estate began to change. Ellie should have been terrified of Adrian. Every other child in Chicago would have run screaming. But Ellie was 3, and 3 doesn't understand crime bosses. 3 only understands sad people and not sad people. Her invasion started small. A cookie under his pillow. A wildflower from the garden on his desk. A crayon drawing that could have been a whale or a shoe. And every morning, she'd appear out of nowhere, plant her feet, and announce, "Hello, Uncle." He never spoke back. He just nodded. But he nodded. Mrs. Rose watched with tears she didn't bother hiding. 25 years, she told the cook. 25 years I've served this family. A maid got fired for misplacing a teaspoon in his study. Now a child leaves a dying weed on his papers, and he keeps it in his pocket. I've seen it, Marta. In his pocket. Maya was terrified. Every time she caught Ellie wandering off, she'd kneel down and whisper, "Baby, please. Mama needs this job." Ellie would nod solemnly. And within an hour, she'd be gone again. What Maya didn't know was that Adrian had started listening for those tiny footsteps. In the middle of tense calls, he'd pause, tilt his head, and only later realize what he was waiting to hear. One afternoon, Ellie stood before a heavy oak door on the 2nd floor. An old brass lock bigger than her hand. She pressed her palm against it. Mrs. Rose appeared too late. "What's inside, Grandma Rose?" "Nothing for little girls. That door is not to be opened. Not by anyone." Ellie nodded. But every time she passed that corridor after that day, she'd stop and press her ear to the wood. like the door itself was breathing. That Adrian caught her once. He stepped out of his study and found her there, cheek flat against the grain, eyes closed. He didn't speak, just stood and watched. Something shifted behind his eyes. October. A storm hit Chicago on a Friday evening. Streets turned to black rivers. Traffic lights swung sideways. Adrian was in a downtown conference room when the meeting collapsed. Lakeshore Drive was closed. Wacker Tunnel was underwater. The other party couldn't make it. He didn't react, just closed his folder, buttoned his jacket, nodded once. Reschedule for Monday. He was in the car by 8. Rocco drove slowly through the rain. Adrian watched water stream sideways along the glass, his mind on business. Numbers. Deals. The usual. The estate came into view at 10:47. The gate rolled open. Rocco stopped under the covered entrance. Vincenzo, the night porter, took Adrian's wet coat. The hall was silent. Always silent, Adrian headed for the grand staircase. One hand on the polished banister, one foot on the first step. And then he heard it. A piano. Clear and hesitant, each note found with care. Rising from the second floor. Adrian went completely still. For 3 years, that door had been locked. No one else had a key. Mrs. Rose wouldn't dare. No staff had ever entered the east wing. His hand tightened. Anger flared hot in his chest. Who dared? He climbed, one step at a time, his body drawn tight as wire. The higher he rose, the clearer the melody became. Each note patient, unafraid. By the time he reached the second floor, he'd stopped again. He recognized it. He didn't shout, didn't slam, didn't charge across the room. He stepped inside slowly, like a man entering cold water. The parquet creaked beneath his feet. The room smelled of lemon polish and dust that had been dusted around, never through. Mrs. Rose's quiet guilt. In the lamplight, Ellie must have turned it on herself. Adrian reached the center of the room. His knees gave. He didn't fall. He knelt. Ellie turned at the sound. She saw the tall, serious uncle on the floor, her face wrinkled with concern. She slid off the bench and ran to him. Two small, sticky palms pressed against his cheeks. "Uncle, don't cry. Did I play it wrong?" Adrian couldn't answer. His mouth opened and closed. He pulled her against his chest and held her like a drowning man grabbing a floating plank. Without dignity, without control. And for the first time in 3 years, sound came out of him. Not a word. Just a ragged breath that broke in his throat. Maya appeared at the doorway, frozen. She saw her daughter in the master's arms. Couldn't breathe. Mrs. Rose arrived a heartbeat later. She put a firm hand on Maya's shoulder and shook her head. Not now. Adrian held Ellie a long time. The clock ticked. Neither woman moved. When he finally released her, she blinked up at him. "Where did you learn that melody, child?" His voice was hoarse. Ellie shrugged with all the gravity of 3 years. "I don't know. My fingers just ran." He looked at her. At the piano. At the silver-framed photo on the lid. Serena. Smiling. He didn't understand what had happened. He only understood that the wound he'd bandaged for 3 years had split open again. He carried Ellie to the door. Maya stammered apologies. Adrian looked at her. Truly looked at her. There's nothing to apologize for. She did nothing wrong. He walked past them both. And he didn't close the music room door. Nobody in that house slept that night. That morning came gray and cold. Adrian summoned Maya to his study. She hadn't slept. She'd spent the night folding their few belongings into suitcases. She was sure she'd be fired. She stood before his desk, hands clasped, bracing for bad news. Adrian asked a question she didn't expect. How long has Ellie been able to remember a melody after hearing it once? Maya blinked. "I don't know, sir. We've never had a piano. Just an old kitchen radio that played hymns on Sundays." Adrian was silent a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer, lifted out the small brass key that had sat there for 3 years. Set it between them. From today, Ellie may enter the music room whenever she wishes. So may you. Maya's mouth dropped open. "Why, sir?" Adrian didn't explain. "The piano needs to be heard again." She left with the key wrapped in a handkerchief. Within days, Adrian called a tuner. The old man drove up from the west side, opened his case, and pressed a key. Listened, pressed another, looked up with surprise. "Sir, this piano's been played. Barely any dust. Someone's been caring for it." Adrian said nothing. Mrs. Rose, arranging flowers in the doorway, suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Ellie started coming and going from the music room as she pleased. She never played for long. Just climbed up, tapped a few notes, laughed, and ran off to bother Mrs. Rose in the kitchen. She didn't know how to play. But sometimes her fingers found a phrase and repeated it, like she was remembering something she'd never learned. Adrian began sitting in the music room at night. He'd spread financial reports on the side table and pretend to read. But he was really just listening. Listening for footsteps. For a stray note. For that small breathing. Mrs. Rose whispered to Maya in the pantry one morning. In 25 years, I've never seen him stay anywhere but his study. Not even his own bedroom. Something's come loose. Don't frighten it. One evening, Ellie climbed into his lap and pointed at a black key between two white ones. What's this called? F-sharp. Why is it black? Adrian smiled. A small, tired smile. Unpracticed. But real. The piano lessons were just the beginning. Ellie started interfering with the whole rhythm of his life. She'd appear in his study at night in her yellow pajamas and tug his sleeve. Hard enough one Tuesday that his pen jumped and scarred a 50-page contract. He didn't scold her. He capped the pen, followed her out, as she dragged him to lunch in the servant's kitchen. In 15 years, he'd never sat at that long pine table. The staff nearly forgot how to eat. A young kitchen assistant crossed herself. Ellie sat between Adrian and the cook, inspected his plate, and demanded, "Uncle, why aren't you eating the vegetables?" He looked at the green beans. He ate them. Mrs. Rose retold that story all over the house. Ellie fell asleep on the sofa beside him while he read a quarterly report. She'd promised she'd just listen. 10 minutes later, her mouth was open and her hand was limp on his knee. He didn't move for 2 hours. His leg went numb under her weight. He didn't shift. Another night, she demanded a bedtime story. He opened his laptop and prepared to read her a briefing on cargo tariffs in a solemn voice. She stopped him after 3 words. She wanted the wolf. He had to be the wolf. Adrian, who'd faced down 3 crime families and 2 federal investigations, surrendered to a 3-year-old. He growled. Tentatively. Ellie fell backward laughing. Then she informed him his wolf sounded like a cat with a cold. He laughed. It came out unbidden, unpolished, honest. He couldn't remember when he'd last laughed at something that wasn't a bitter joke. Mrs. Rose, passing the doorway, kept walking. But the corner of her mouth moved. Later, she said to Maya, "The master's being domesticated by a 3-year-old. I'm writing this in my journal so my grandchildren will believe me." Maya smiled and looked at her hands. She kept her distance. He was the boss. She was just a housekeeper. But she noticed things. He said thank you now. He used staff names in the corridors. Small changes. One night past midnight, Ellie ran a fever. Maya sat up rocking her. A soft knock came. She opened the door to find Adrian in the hallway in his shirt sleeves, holding children's medicine and ginger tea. "Mrs. Rose thought you might need these." He didn't step inside, just set them in her hands, nodded, and walked away. Maya closed the door slowly. Her hands trembled. Not from cold. Later that night, Adrian stood on the 3rd-floor balcony looking out over the dark garden. The city glowed low and orange. For the first time in 3 years, the weight in his chest wasn't crushing him. He started seeing Maya differently. Not as staff. As a person. He noticed the light under her door at 1 a.m. Noticed she mended Ellie's winter coat by candlelight instead of buying a new one. Noticed she ate what the kitchen was going to throw away, crusts, ends of roasts, bruised fruit. Did it quickly, without fuss. One evening, close to 11, he went down to the kitchen for water. Maya sat at the pine table, hands around a cup of cold tea. Tears fell silently into the cup. Not sobbing, just leaking. He didn't ask. Didn't stop. He poured hot water into a clean cup, added a tea bag, set it beside her elbow, and walked out. The next morning, he told Mrs. Rose to double Maya's salary. Maya confronted him in his study. "Sir, I can't accept this. I don't earn this." Adrian looked at her. "This isn't a gift. It's fairness. You do the work of 2 because Ellie lives here. You eat half what the others eat. I'm just adjusting the number to match what's already true." Maya's jaw moved like she wanted to argue. She lowered her hands and accepted the envelope. After that, they began to talk. Not much. Never like friends. But as equals. Short sentences that met in the middle. He asked about her husband once. She told him. No settlement. 3 jobs to pay hospital bills after the funeral. She didn't ask for pity. "You're stronger than most men I do business with," he said. "I'm not strong. I just had no choice." That's exactly what strength is. She looked at him differently after that night. A soft rain fell over Chicago. Ellie was playing hide-and-seek in the music room. Mrs. Rose and Maya were on the third floor folding linens. Nobody thought to check on the child that Ellie had hidden Rabbit under the piano bench. Now she was crawling back to get him. Her elbow struck something. A piece of wood shifted. She pushed it with the seriousness of a small carpenter. A panel slid sideways, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay two things: a thick sheath of handwritten music paper tied with red ribbon, and a cream envelope sealed with wax. Delicate handwriting she couldn't read. For Adrian from Serena. She scrambled out, clutching both items. Found her mother in the linen closet. Mama, I found this under the piano chair. Did Uncle Adrian hide my toys down there? Maya turned. She saw the envelope. The color drained from her face. She recognized that handwriting. Serena's hand. She'd seen it before, on cards and in books Mrs. Rose kept locked away. Maya knelt to Ellie's height. Baby, this is Uncle Adrian's secret. We'll give it to him ourselves. Don't tell anyone. Not Grandma Rose. Not the kitchen staff. Not even Rabbit. Ellie nodded solemnly, pressed her finger to her lips, and whispered, "Show." Maya locked the items in her desk drawer. She'd give them to Adrian tonight. As she stepped back into the corridor with folded towels in her arms, the Victor Hale crossed her path. He was Adrian's security chief, 12 years of loyalty. He nodded politely. His eyes flicked to what she carried. The envelope lay uppermost on the towels. The Victor recognized the handwriting instantly. He'd seen it 3 years ago, on ledger margins, on notes, on a question mark beside a transaction he'd hoped no woman would notice. His face paled for half a second. Then the polite smile returned. He walked on. Maya noticed nothing. Victor reached his room at the far end of the corridor, closed the door, and leaned against it. His knuckles went white on the doorknob. For 3 years, he believed the secret had died with Serena. It had just come back to life. Victor Hale was 45. He'd been part of the Valente household longer than most. His father had driven Adrian's grandfather. He'd grown up sleeping above the garage. When the old boss died and Adrian took over, he'd been given the trusted keys. He held security. He kept the night alarm codes. He had every safe combination, including the one in Adrian's dressing room. When Adrian traveled, Victor slept in the West Wing. When Adrian was home, Victor knew every camera position and shift change. He designed them himself. Adrian trusted him absolutely. For 5 years, Victor had been stealing. Small at first. A percentage here, a shipment there, shell companies in Delaware. Then contracts passed to the Russian syndicate, the Koslovs, trying to muscle into Adrian's ports. $12 million. Maybe more. He'd stopped counting. 3 years ago, Serena had started helping Adrian audit the charitable foundation. A small favor, just paperwork. But she had a musician's ear for patterns. And the ledgers had patterns that shouldn't be there. She said nothing at first. Started comparing quietly. Kept her own notebook. On a spring evening, she'd followed Victor's car to a warehouse on the river. Watched him meet a man with a Russian accent. She was gathering final proof. Then the cough started. The weight loss. The hospital. 3 months later, she was gone. Victor had grieved convincingly. And in his heart, he'd believed the secret had gone with her. Now he stood in his room with the door closed. He'd seen the envelope in Maya's hands. That handwriting. If that letter reached Adrian, everything ended. Not just the money. Adrian would kill him. The Koslovs would kill him first to shut his mouth that he couldn't attack Maya directly. Adrian's feelings for her were obvious. Any move against her would be traced. He couldn't steal the envelope back. Cameras were everywhere. Only one path. Destroy Adrian's trust in Maya before the letter reached him. Get her dismissed. She'd leave. The envelope would leave with her. Then Victor could take it back. He needed a weapon. Something that would hit Adrian where he was still bleeding. The diamond necklace. Adrian had given it to Serena on their wedding day. $200,000 in stones. Sat in the private safe in a black velvet box. Unopened for 3 years. Victor had the code. He sat at his desk until dawn, building his plan in his head. No cameras. No paper. At sunrise, he washed his face, put on a gray suit, and began. Victor waited for the perfect morning. Tuesday. Adrian left at 8 for a downtown meeting. Wouldn't be back for lunch. Maya took Ellie into the rose garden with Mrs. Rose to cut stems. Victor watched them disappear behind the trellis. Then he moved. Thin leather gloves. Second floor landing. Adrian's bedroom. The safe behind the mirror. He entered the secondary code. The steel door opened with a soft breath. Stacks of currency, contract folders, passports, and on the second shelf, the black velvet box that he lifted it out. Didn't open it. Closed the safe. Wiped the keypad. Swung the mirror back. Stepped out. He climbed to the third floor. Maya was giving Ellie her midday bath. He timed it. 45 to 60 minutes. He had 8 minutes. He entered her small room. Crossed to the wicker laundry basket. Ellie's soiled clothes lay on top. Yellow bib sock. Trousers with grass-stained knees. He lifted the whole pile. Slid the velvet box to the very bottom. Lowered the clothes back over it. Left the room. Closed the door softly. Walked the exact line he'd marked for the camera's blind spot. No one entering. No one leaving. Trap set. Now the discovery that Adrian returned at 4:50. Victor met him in the front hall with a worried expression. Sir, the secondary safe registered an irregular access at midday. I recommend we check it immediately. Upstairs. The safe opened. The velvet box was gone. Victor spoke gently. Sir, standard security protocol requires a search of all private spaces, including staff quarters. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's procedure. Adrian nodded. Discreetly. No one shamed. Victor arranged the search. For kitchen staff rooms. Nothing. Mrs. Rose's room. Nothing. Maya's room. Last Adrian walked with them. He wanted to be there. To tell Maya this was routine. That he believed nothing. Maya opened the door in her apron. Ellie was asleep on the small bed. Victor stepped inside. Walked directly to the laundry basket. Lifted the children's clothes aside. Reached to the bottom. Drew out the velvet box. Opened it. The necklace caught the light. Cold fires across the ceiling. Maya's face went white. She shook her head. No sound came out. Adrian took the box. He held it in his palm. Looked at Maya. 3 seconds of hesitation. Maya saw it. Not accusation. Just doubt. That flicker hurt worse than a shout would have. A shout she could have answered. A hesitation from the man she'd begun to trust in some quiet corner of her heart. That could not be answered. She stood straight. Her voice was cleared. I didn't take it. But if you look at me with those eyes 1 second longer, sir, I won't be able to stay either. Victor stepped forward. Sir, this is serious. We should open a formal investigation. Perhaps involve the police. Maya cut him off. No need. I resign. I'll pack in the morning. Mrs. Rose came running. She took Adrienne's sleeve. Sir, I've never spoken to you this way, but this woman didn't do it. I swear on my mother's grave. Adrian didn't answer. He was still trying to swallow 3 years of practiced distrust. And it was slowed up. Maya looked at him one last time. She lifted Ellie, carried her past him, closed the door softly. The way a woman closes a door on something she's not coming back through. That night, Adrian sat in his study with the velvet box open. Diamonds glittered on the ceiling. Something was wrong. If Maya had stolen, why had she hidden it so poorly? A woman who mended coats by candlelight knew how to hide things. Why had Victor gone straight to that laundry basket in every other room? He'd opened drawers first that Adrian had watched. He hadn't noticed at the time. He was noticing now. Morning came. He stood at the study window. Maya was packing the last suitcase. Ellie sat on the stone step, rabbit in her arms. He wanted to run down. His feet wouldn't move. Mrs. Rose stood in the hall with a thin mouth. She pushed an envelope into Maya's hand, a month's wages from her own savings. A box of Ellie's favorite biscuits. She couldn't speak. The kitchen staff formed a quiet line. Nina was crying openly. Nobody believed Maya had stolen. But nobody had the voice to argue. The taxi arrived. Maya carried down the suitcases. She knelt to Ellie. Say goodbye to Grandma Rose. Ellie ran to Mrs. Rose, wrapped both arms around her, so tight the old woman's spine curved. Mrs. Rose put a hand on the child's head. Said nothing. Ellie let go. Ran back into the house, climbed the stairs, reached the study door, pushed it open. Adrian stood at the window. Ellie walked to his desk, set 2 things down. The cream envelope, the music papered. I found these under the piano chair. Mama said to give them to you. I'm giving them to you as a goodbye present. Don't be sad, Uncle. I'll remember the song you like. She ran out. Didn't look back. Adrian reached for the envelope. His hand shook. He broke the wax seal. Serena's writing. 3 months before her death. Adrian, my love, the man you trust most is the one who's been breaking you from the inside. That he read slowly. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Secret meetings. Russian contacts. $10 million. Maybe more. Forgive me for being silent. I needed proof. If I don't have time, Trust this letter. Trust it like I'm still beside you. I love you. I love the whole of your life, including the part you'll have to live without me. Adrian set the letter down. His hand was still. 3 years. 3 years of guarding a locked door. 3 years of punishing the world for losing her. 3 years of having the man who'd betrayed them both eat at his table. And the woman he doubted for 3 seconds had just driven away. He pressed the intercom. His voice could freeze a river. Security. Pull every camera from the last 48 hours near Maya Bennett's room. Now. And find Victor Hale. Don't let him know we're looking. Enzo brought the laptop within 15 minutes. Adrian sat. The footage ran at 4 times speed. He raised his hand. Normal playback. A figure in a gray suit. Thin leather gloves. Camera aware. Walked directly to Maya's door. Opened it. 6 minutes. Left. Shoulders relaxed. At the corner, glanced back toward the bathroom. Victor. Alone. No one else. Only Victor, Enzo, Rocco, Salvatore. Now, the 2 men arrived. Rocco. Salvatore. Adrian handed Serena's letter to Salvatore. Turned the laptop to Rocco to read. Watch. Then move. They did. When they finished, Adrian said, I need Victor in this room within 1 hour. He must not suspect. Tell him a port contract's gone sideways. Rocco left. Salvatore stayed. They began pulling account numbers. 3 offshore accounts. 2 shell companies. 1 came in holding. Salvatore's mouth grew thinner with each entry. Rocco returned. Victor's gone. Left 20 minutes ago with a suitcase. Told the gate he had a downtown meeting. Phone's off. Car tracker removed. Adrian wasn't surprised. Victor had built his escape route. Probably from the moment he saw Maya with that envelope. Salvatore, freeze those accounts. Every dollar. Then get internal counsel and our federal contacts. Build the file tonight. Rocco, close every channel Victor used with the Koslovs. If he tries to buy protection, I want the door slammed before his hand touches the knob. Both men left. Within 2 hours, Victor's assets were stoned. But Victor wasn't the most important target now. Adrian picked up the phone. He hesitated. She'd told him she couldn't stay if he looked at her that way. What would he say now? I was wrong. Come back. He set the receiver down. First, he had to make things right. By his hands. Not his mouth. He called Mrs. Rose. Rose, do you know where she went? A small silence. Her cousin Lena in Melrose Park. I have the address. And Rose, thank you for believing her when I didn't. Mrs. Rose's voice was very quiet. Sir, she believed you. That's the part that hurts. Maya and Ellie arrived at Lena's small house. Lena asked few questions. Just made grilled cheese and set out a spare pillow that night. Ellie curled against her mother's shoulder. Mama, when are we going back to see Uncle Adrian and Grandma Rose? Maya couldn't answer. She just held her tighter. The next morning, Maya went out for groceries. Ellie was napping. Mrs. Barron across the fence agreed to listen. Victor had been watching since the night before. He had a man inside Valente Communications who'd passed him Maya's location before the leak was stopped. 1 hour. That's all he needed. He also knew, from a stray conversation Maya had in the kitchen, that Ellie had found the envelope. The pantry camera had caught every word. Victor had reviewed the file that he needed the original letter. Without it, the Koslovs would shoot him in the back of a warehouse. Ellie was the only hostage worth trading for. Victor arrived at 10:30 with 2 men in a black van. At 10:28, Mrs. Barron got a phone call. A patient 2 doors down was in distress. Would she please walk over? She hurried out. Lena's door was unlocked. Victor walked to the back bedroom. Ellie lay curled in the middle of the small bed. One arm around Rabbit. He lifted her. She stirred. Saw the gray-suited man from the estate. Uncle Victor. He put a finger to his lips. Uncle Adrian sent me. Be a good girl. Don't cry. Ellie believed him. She held Rabbit against his shoulder. They were in the van in 40 seconds. The rabbit fell in the hallway. Maya came home at 11:15. The door stood open. She ran through the house. The back bedroom was empty. The rabbit lay on the threshold. She sank to her knees. Couldn't breathe. Then her hand found her phone, and her thumb found the number she knew by heart. Adrian was in the study with Salvatore. His phone rang. Maya's name. Ellie is gone. He was on his feet before she finished the second word. His voice was level in the way a river is level just before a fall. The address. Lock the door. Open for no one. I'm 40 minutes away. Rocco's 15. He hung up. Rocco, Melrose Park. Her cousin's house. Protect her. Salvatore, every loyal man. Close every road out of Chicago. Traffic cameras. 3-block radius. Any man who lays a hand on that child dies by mine. His voice was quiet, but nobody in that house had heard him speak that way in 3 years. He was in the sedan within 8 minutes. In his hand, the cloth rabbit. Maya had pressed it into his palm the day she left. It still smelled faintly of cookies, and of a kind of sunlight he'd promised himself he'd never lose again. Wait for me, little one. Traffic cameras tracked the black van. Inside informants confirmed each piece. Within 90 minutes, the route led to the abandoned industrial district, to the warehouse Serena had named in her letter. Adrian arrived with 18 armed men. 4 vehicles took the approaches. Signal jammer activated. All phones inside went dark. Rocco stepped out with a rifle case. Sir, we go in now. Fast. 3 teams. No. Salvatore came around the car with a folder. Adrian, he has the child. We can't wait. No. I go alone. Rocco, the back through the loading dock. Salvatore, hold the front. If shots begin, take his men, not him. I want Victor breathing. He lifted a slim black case. The copy. Originals stay with Salvatore. Adrian walked to the warehouse alone. The main door scraped open. Inside. Empty concrete floor. Broken skylight. 1 shaft of gray light. Victor sat in the center. Ellie on a folding chair beside him, wrists bound with cloth rope. She wasn't crying. She held a new pink rabbit. Gas station purchased. The real rabbit was in Adrian's coat pocket. 2 gunmen at Victor's shoulders. Victor smiled professionally. Sir, I was wondering how many men you'd bring. I didn't expect you alone. Adrian set down the case. The copy. Originals are in Salvatore's safe. 30-minute head start in exchange for Ellie. Sir, you underestimate me. I need the originals. You'll destroy them here in front of me. He tilted his head toward Ellie. For 3 years, you had no weakness. Now you're ready to trade the whole empire for a child with none of your blood. Serena must be laughing in her grave. Ellie looked at Adrian. Her eyes were calm. She whispered across the concrete. Uncle Adrian, you came. Adrian looked at her. His voice carried through the hollow warehouse. Victor, you're wrong. Ellie isn't my weakness. She's why I remember I still have something to protect. Serena's not laughing. She taught me that. I just took 3 years to understand. At that moment, a single rifle shot cracked from the gantry above. Rocco's shot. The first gunman dropped. Everything broke. The second gunman raised his weapon. Adrian crossed 6 feet in 2 strides. Seized Ellie. Turned his back to the shots. A bullet burned across his left shoulder. He didn't stop. Rocco fired again. Second gunman fell. Victor drew his pistol. Leveled it on Adrian's back. His hand shook. Adrian didn't draw. He just tightened his arms around Ellie. Turned his head. Shoot. But you'll die inside the next breath, and she'll live. That's what I need. Victor hesitated half a second too long. The front door crashed open. Salvatore came through with 3 men. Weapons raised. Victor was down on the concrete face first. Alive. As ordered, Adrian carried Ellie out into the gray afternoon. Blood ran down his sleeve. He didn't loosen his arms. Uncle, you're hurt. I'm fine. If you're fine, I'm fine. At the perimeter, Maya was waiting. Rocco had brought her. She stood with her hands over her mouth. Adrian lowered Ellie gently into her arms. Maya crushed her daughter against her chest, buried her face in Ellie's hair, let out one long breath. Then she raised her eyes. 12 stitches that evening. Not at a hospital. In the clinic behind the estate garage. An old family physician who'd been sewing up Valente men for decades. Ellie sat beside him the whole time, watching the needle with narrowed eyes. She flinched each time the thread pulled. Didn't cry. Maya stood in the doorway, arms folded, silent. Watching. 1 week later, Victor's betrayal was fully exposed. 12.4 million traced through the accounts. Salvatore led 3 lawyers working in shifts for 4 days. Every dollar recovered. 3 informants identified and removed from the state. The Koslovs withdrew 2 fronts from the Southern District. Victor was handed to the family council. He wouldn't see a free sky again. Adrian didn't press Maya to come back. He came to Lena's house on a Wednesday morning alone. Carried a leather folder. Didn't step inside. Maya opened the door. He placed the folder on the table inside. The formal report. Your name is cleared. There's compensation. Take it. Refuse it. Throw it in the river. Whatever gives you peace. He stayed on the threshold. Hands at his sides. I didn't come to ask you to return. I came to tell you this. The thing I'm most ashamed of isn't that Victor stole from me. It's the 3 seconds I let my past make me doubt you. I won't forgive myself for that. You have every right to your choice. If you never want to see me again, I'll respect it. But Ellie, if you allow it, I'd like to be an uncle to her. No conditions. Maya didn't answer. Adrian nodded once. Turned. Walked back to the car. 3 weeks passed. Rocco watched the house discreetly. Ellie caught a cold. Adrian sent medicine through Mrs. Rose. Didn't come himself. Inside the estate, he rewrote the rules. No private spaces searched without evidence. Staff could review security footage themselves. Mrs. Rose present as witness in every case. He wrote 22 apology letters by hand. One to every staff member who'd stood in the corridor that day. Mrs. Rose visited Lena's house. Told Maya everything. Didn't urge. Just told. Poured tea. Left. Maya listened. The 4th Saturday came warm and yellow. Maya carried Ellie to the iron gate. Didn't press the bell. Just stood past the trellis. Mrs. Rose was cutting roses. Ellie shrieked. Grandma Rose. Mrs. Rose stared. Then she ran. The gate opened. Maya walked through. Embraced Mrs. Rose once. Let go. Adrian stood on the front steps. Waiting. Maya walked slowly up the drive. Ellie squirmed free and threw her arms around his knees. Uncle Adrian, is your shoulder better? He bent and lifted her. Didn't take his eyes from Maya as she stopped 3 steps below him. Her voice was low. I'm not coming back as a housekeeper. If I stay, it has to be different. Adrian answered without hesitation. I know. I've been waiting for you to say that. They walked into the great hall together. 3 shadows crossing the marble at the same pace. No one behind another. For the first time, Maya returned, not as staff. Adrian offered her a place in the charitable foundation. The small office Serena had once run. Keeping ledgers. Organizing programs for fatherless children. Work that had waited 3 years for honest hands. Maya started evening accounting classes. Carried a small notebook everywhere. Mrs. Rose smuggled her extra pens. Ellie enrolled in private preschool. Maya still walked her to the gate herself. Held the small warm hand until the classroom door closed. Ellie got a bedroom in the east wing, beside the music room. The music room door was never locked again. Adrian and Maya grew together slowly. He didn't buy expensive gifts. He drove her to a tiny Vietnamese place Ellie loved. Plastic chairs. Steaming broth. He taught her balance sheets. She taught him to sew buttons. Laughed when he pricked his thumb. Mrs. Rose stole photographs and whispered to the cook. For 3 years, I thought this house only had ghosts. Now it's breathing again. 6 months later, on a late evening, Adrian returned from a negotiation. He stepped into the front hall, shrugged off his coat. Then he heard it. The piano. From the 2nd floor. He stood a moment. Not frozen. Not in pain. Just arriving home. He climbed the stairs without hurry. Ellie sat on the piano bench. Her feet finally touched the floor. She was working through Serena's melody. Slower now. Complete. With small childish twists woven in. Maya stood in the doorway. Arms folded. Smiling. Adrian passed her. Touched her hand lightly. Sat down beside Ellie. On the closed lid, the silver-framed photograph of Serena still rested. Beside it stood a 2nd frame. Adrian, Maya, and Ellie in the rose garden. Ellie perched on his shoulders. Maya laughing into the sun. Neither photo covered the other. Ellie stopped playing. Looked up. Uncle Adrian, did you find the last note of the song yet? Adrian rested one hand on the keys. Not yet. We'll find it together. For the rest of our lives, if we have to. The past doesn't need to be erased for the present to be lived. Loving someone who's gone doesn't mean closing the door on those still here. Sometimes the one who unlocks the hardest heart isn't the strongest. It's the smallest, the most innocent, the one who doesn't see walls. Only doors. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Have you ever held on so tight that it became a prison? What did you find the courage to let go so a new beginning could interweave? Love to read your heart in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey with Adrian, Maya, and little Ellie, please subscribe, hit like, and share with someone who needs to hear it today. New emotional stories every day. We'd be honored to have you for the next one. Until then, good health, peaceful days, and a life full of small warmth. May you always have someone who helps you open the door you locked long ago. Goodbye for now. We'll see you in the next story.